It's been too long since we've had Mario back with us, but you know he's been putting a studio together up there in his in one of his locations, and so I'm glad to see the studio's set up. And Mario, come on in, because we've got so much business with God going on. The most exciting thing, I get involved with some exciting things, but what I'm seeing God do right here fills me with a kind of a dread anticipation that is filled with joy at the same time. But the dread is, I really believe this is an answer to the prayers that I've been praying for decades, that I would be able to get behind something. Little did I know that I'd be involved with it this closely, but something that could actually work and change the course of a failing war that we're having with the powers of darkness over the destiny of America. Once COVID hit, once the ballots hit, once the election went sideways, once January 6th hit, I could see then Biden comes in, then the economy goes down in Afghanistan, and then Ukraine. I'm seeing what's happening. We're at a zigzag moment, honestly, and that's where David had lost virtually everything and needed God to intervene in order for him to recover what was lost. And man, you can only go so long in that situation before your losses are irretrievable and you've got a new story, which is like the Jews coming back after 70 years of Babylon rebuilding. Right. We aren't there, but we're getting close. But Mario, we have reason to believe that God is doing something. So share with the folks the perspective, because we were talking a minute ago and I said, we just got to get this on the air. People need to hear our conversation.
Okay. Well, I want to explain the spiritual phenomenon that's going on in the country right now. And I want to use two groups: the Christian in the church, the political conservative in the marketplace, how they're coming together in a strange way. It's different than what we thought. The people who are politically involved, who are conservatives, politicians, who don't necessarily feel like they have a deep spiritual experience of any kind. They love America. Here's what's happening to them. The evil of the left has become so pronounced. Let's take the most evil example. Your child could be taken away from you now in the state of Washington if you forbid them to go through gender transformation procedures. So that's suddenly showing the left for what it really is, something that's demonic. So the conservatives are becoming spiritual. They're praying because they're looking at it and they're going, this is beyond an ideology now. This is beyond just policy. This is something evil and malignant that's going on. And I'm dreading it and I'm going through it. Meanwhile, in the church, there's something interesting. And that is that the idea that you shouldn't be involved in politics, the veneer that you shouldn't be involved in politics is collapsing, because they're seeing the evil too. So the awareness of evil among conservatives that aren't necessarily churchgoers is that there is something evil afoot, and I need to know God. Meanwhile, in the church, we are disunified because some say we shouldn't be commenting on politics. But now the gratuitous nature of the political is so evident that pastors realize they cannot be silent about it anymore. It's too gratuitous. And the reason I mentioned zigzag is because I looked at King David, who lost everything. And he's on a journey to try to retrieve his family, but he's helpless to do it because he has no idea where the Amalekites have gone. So just on automatic pilot, he says to his men who have rocks in their hand to kill him, get on your horses, we're going to charge. Knowing full well he had nowhere to go except one thing. He'd gotten a promise from God that he should pursue him. So he heads off in what he thinks is the best direction. He has nothing to go on, and he sees an Egyptian. The Egyptian is dying. The Egyptian is a slave left by this raiding party of Amalekites. And David sees him, and he brings healing and oil and feeds him. Then he asks him the question, can you take me down to this company of raiders? And he said, yes, because I worked for him. Now, here's the deal. We as the church don't know how to get to the lost anymore. We don't. We need actually people to be converted to help us to speak to the culture right now. This is what we saw in the Jesus movement. It's happening again. I call it the Lazarus generation. But the upshot of it is, the point, the bottom line is, the Christians have become so frustrated by the evil that they realize they have to speak out. Benjamin Franklin said, we must hang together or we will most assuredly hang each one separated from the other. That's what pastors are starting to realize. This government is so evil, so rogue, so malignant, and so vigilant in its malignancy that everyone has to speak out. And they're finding out that conservatives who have been speaking out say, I need to know God. This is why the Fire and Glory tour in Florida was so explosive, because it brought two elements of frustration together. It answered burning questions for the conservative camp and for the Christian camp. And it was this: Christians need to speak out. David said, can you take me down to this host? So this alignment of an Egyptian slave and a would-be king was an amazing moment. It's the moment I believe we're in right now.
Well, you know, when you're talking about this, they just had a vote yesterday, and whenever people watch this, they probably missed it. It was about whether or not men should be participating as women in women's sports. Now, you take that across the board. Males physically, physiologically are designed differently.
Right.
And so when the Bible says, it talks about the woman being the weaker vessel, I don't care how you want to parse the verse. The fact of the matter is most husbands have an advantage. If it's an abusive relationship, they're physically the ones that have the power to be more abusive. So the party vote was fascinating. 100% of the Democrats voted in order to support men participating in female sports if they identify as a woman. And the Republicans, in unity, I think for the most part, voted against it. But the point is this: the Democratic Party, and this isn't about parties, but you might as well recognize what is. You need to call it what it is. A high number of them don't agree with the fact that their 7-year-old or 8-year-old or 9 or 14-year-old can be taken from them because some teacher radicalized them to think that they're a girl in a boy's body or a boy in a girl's body, and they want to permanently alter their own physical DNA in order to match up to what they think will make them happy. I guarantee that the rational 250 or so, 240 or 260 Democrat congressional folks, men and women, aren't going to be on the debate stage saying, I'm all for that. But they are voting for it because of power. So here you have a moral evil of a really compounded sort. I have more compassion for the transgender activists that is screaming in rage because they believe that the 50, 60, or 70% suicide rate is because people don't embrace us, not realizing it's because of the psychological torture of thinking you're in the wrong body. But it's what's worse is the politician is using that sickness and that torment as a vehicle for the acquisition of privilege and power and prosperity. They know that if they can get if that subject will get them elected, they'll go ahead and steal your children and castrate your boys and girls because it gives them power. And that's an evil of an even more diabolic source. So when I'm looking at the evil continuum, the transgender thing is shocking. But the political thing is I believe where we're going to have to actually take the battle.
Yep, and we have to understand that the argument about fairness in sports is demonstrated in the fact that we don't have any women trying to become men in order to compete in men's sports. Nobody's doing that. And that proves to us that they know the physiological advantage, and that, you know, you can call it anything you want, but a man competing in women's sport has an unfair advantage, and they know that themselves, as I just said, because there are no women transitioning to become men in order to compete in men's sports.
So what we have here is the reason why the Fire and Glory, I believe, is a unique alchemy, because you have never departed from this. And this is what I love about you. For you, It's souls. It's the gospel. It's signs and wonders.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you're almost to the point of I value the fact that it's all about souls, because for me, the soul winning is an important aspect. But my programming and my burden is, man, if we have a harvest like in Guatemala, where 51% of the people are Christians, but the Christians never do anything, you can have a Marxist takeover of your government. You can make your life miserable. You can live a permanent serfdom if you're not careful. I'm looking at this and saying the harvest of souls plus the equipping of those souls. So in the parking lot in Ocala, I ran into two young men, equally unsolicited, approached me as I went to my car. And I think God sent them, Mario, to put this in my ear.
Right.
And they said to me, one of them said, Mr. Wallnau, can I say something? I go, yeah. I got to tell you, when I first came here, I was really turned off because I came here. I mean, I'm expecting, to hear about, Jesus and healing and signs and wonders. And you're talking about right away today, like socialism and what's going on in the political arena and what's going on in the nation. But I have to tell you, after I listened, it started to make a lot of sense. And then when we went into the evening meetings with the power of God, by the next day, I realized I went from a one-lane highway to a 4-lane highway. I've got a much bigger calling on my life than I thought I had, and I've got more permission to fulfill God's call than I had when I got here, because I was working myself down to just being a signs and wonder missionary. Now I realize I've got a whole canvas to paint on. Two people came up to me and gave me the same statement. I wasn't so sure about talking about politics, socialism, what's going on. But then once I heard it, I said, man, nobody taught me these things. How come I never heard it before? Because the whole world belongs to Jesus, not just the narrow sliver of the guy coming out from the gutter. It's all the way to the people kill themselves, I found out, Mario, that are bankers. Never forget one time I was at Annabelle's family's house for a cocktail party, as her parents and my parents would call them. And there was a wealthy banker there, and I was a young Christian, and I was feeling really urgent about making sure that he had his life successfully in the hands of Jesus. And I felt like, well, he's a banker. My gosh, he's friends with my parents and her parents. And I talked myself out of cornering him to see if he was ready to meet Jesus. And within 48 hours, he went to the Marriott Hotel and committed suicide. I never forgot that. And I realized I don't care if you're up and out or down and out. The gospel works both ways. So, you don't want to judge people that way. And it's the same thing with the calling that we've got in the Fire and Glory tour. It's desperate people are in all places of society right now, aren't they, Mario?
Yep. And here's the key. What we're fighting for, ladies and gentlemen, is to preach the gospel and to protect our freedom and right to preach the gospel. That's the two imperatives. That's how I became politically involved. The day came when I realized, hey, we're going to shut you up, Mario Murillo. We're going to take away your freedom to win souls in America. And we're building a power structure so that you will not be able to. That's what makes it a straw argument. When you hear a pastor who's parsing words and masking cowardice behind spiritual terminology, when they say, I cannot possibly become political because it'll divide my church. And then I look at him and say, Pastor, what's going to be your option when they take your church away? Because early on, when God was trying to warn you that there were steps we could take to prevent the disaster, you didn't take them. That's what I'm saying. Now, many of these pastors that were reticent, now they believe me. They were their churches, since they were locked down, since they were forced and surveilled, some of them broken into by the FBI. Now we understand the true nature of what's going on. And suddenly men and women of God realize we have got to be in the forefront. And that's why Fire and Glory has worked so well, because it's God's will for us to be enlightened and empowered This is what the sons and daughters of Issachar, their weapon was. They understood the times and what Israel should do. And that's what's not going to happen. If we over-spiritualize our current national crisis, if we over-spiritualize it, or we say blindly, it's all in God's hands and we have no part in it, then we're going to violate all of the scriptures, which show us that civic duty, the anointing, all of this influence is critical and key right now. And we can't miss our opportunity.
Resist the devil and he will flee from you. It isn't just resist the devil in your church or in your thought life. You've got to resist the devil in slavery. You've got to resist the devil in pedophilia. You've got to resist the devil in the legalization of drugs. You know, when I think about this, if a country is willing to vote in favor of men and women's sports, men that think they're women in women's prisons, getting women pregnant, if they're willing to take children away from parents because the child at the age of 7 ought to be able to know what they want to do, can't drive a car, can't own a gun, can't vote, but can permanently mutilate their genitals. If you can have rational arguments from legislators in California this month, voting on legalizing sex between homosexual men and 14-year-old boys because they no longer want to be prosecuted for going after 14-year-olds. They probably would come against you for preaching against it as well. I would think that the moment is coming very quickly, as in Canada, where certain parts of the Bible are labeled as hate speech for saying what you say. And so you can't preach that. You can't preach this. You can't preach that. And it's not too far before you see your clergy locked up and in prison, your churches shut down. And I do believe that's the plan. And I think that enough people, like you're saying, conservatives that don't go to church are the sweet spot we're looking for in the Fire and Glory tour. Got to tell you, we don't want this to be like Asbury. You know who went to Asbury? Every revival junkie on planet Earth. They were making trips out of Korea. That's why they crashed the website, so to speak. It was all my age group that longs for a revival showing up and cramming into a Gen Z awakening. But the reality is this thing is a lot different than that. This is a tsunami that is bigger than your traditional revival. It's going to whack and hit and shake every aspect of society. And Mario, it's going to be coming to a theater near Colorado Springs, July 16th through 19th. You want to go to fireandglorytour.com. You want to register to get there right now. This tent that's there is a glory tent. It's a signs and wonders tent. It's like going to an A.A. Allen moment. It's going back in history. If you have a nostalgia for the great tent meetings, Mario Murillo delivers the secret sauce. I've been there. I love it. It's 4 stories high, people. This is going to be like a towering sign. And there's I'm telling you already, even the negative, sorry to say it, secular press is already shocked and worried about what's coming in, because the devil knows faster sometimes than the Christians do what's coming at him. But Colorado will never be the same. That seats 5,211 people, July 16th through 19th. You want to register because this thing is going to fill up fast, and it's going to be. And I expect that this event is even going to build off the last one, and the last one was an experimental prototype.
Right. We had 4,500 people on the Sunday night at Fire Glory at the World Equestrian Center. And when we get to Colorado Springs, we already have hundreds of volunteers already signed up 2.5 months ahead of time. So it is time for you to register to be at Fire and Glory Tour. Now, this is everything we've talked about in this show is combining 2 elements. We're talking about conservatives. We're talking about church and the nitro and glycerin of all of this coming together. Well, this, for the first time, is blending the Fire and Glory tour like we saw in Fort Myers and then again in Ocala at the World Equestrian Center, and Living Proof, our regular crusade, where we're going to be advertising, and in the evening services, we're going to pray for people with cancer to be healed. We're going to pray for people that are paralyzed to get up and walk. We're going to believe for blind eyes to open and the miracles of the Bible to be seen in the tent. Why? Because we're beyond words. The arguments, the lies, the perversion, the constant manipulation, and the censorship, and the artificial intelligence that we're facing, all of the things that are going on are not going to be answered by the way we've been doing it before. We need a Book of Acts intervention. So imagine that in one session under the tent, you're going to be instructed on understanding the times and what you should do and how it is not futile, that America can be turned around. You're going to be armed. Then at night, the fire and the glory will fall on you, and people that you love can be saved and healed. I can't imagine a more explosive event. And for us to inaugurate our new tent in this way, in this fashion, it leaves me speechless, because it is going to be so historic what God does on July 16th through the 19th in Colorado Springs.
You know, in the daytime experience, we're still working on this, because this is the fun part. We're in the laboratory with Jesus putting this together, and
yes,
in the mornings, the afternoon, we just had the meeting got taken over, kind of accidentally, by the hunger of people to be filled with the power of the Holy Spirit. We have 700 or 800 people come forward. We had to pull Stephen Strang, Floyd Brown. I had to pull business people out of the audience and say,
right,
all oars to the water, into the water. I can't pray for all these people. We had them going up and down. They said they have not seen something like that since like the charismatic movement and the Jesus movement, because the power of God is wanting to fall on, and as I would believe, is a confirmation of what the Lord is capable of doing and what the Lord wants
Amen.
to do. And it's going to be happening there. I'm so excited. Once again, fireandglorytour.com. You go there now. You want to register for this. By the way, there's going to be a brunch. If this might be watching this after the fact, but on May 20th, Saturday, 11 a.m., you contact your friends. If you know business leaders, if you know legislators, if you know pastors, you need to get them to Church for All Nations. May 20th, 11 a.m., we're going to have a special leadership impartation brunch.
That's right.
It's dynamic, and they're coming in from all over too, Mario. I like this is for Colorado, but it's interesting the people that are going to come from all over the place to get in on the event, because they can sense something alive is happening.
You know, we had a meeting in Colorado Springs on Sunday night, the 16th of April at Radiant Church, and I'm telling you, for the first time, I didn't know how to explain what had happened. We had 1,553 people show up to a church that only had 750 seats. And supernaturally, they all got in the building. I can't explain it. So many people got saved, but the outstanding takeaway was that souls were saved in an atmosphere of fire and miracles, where young people were being healed. We had one kid. He came into the meeting for the strangest reason that you could ever imagine, Lance. I'll make this quick. He was running from gangs that had put a contract out on him. His life was in danger, and he had to hide. So he ducked into the church. And here he is in the audience, gangster. And I point to his section and I say, there's a young man that has a damaged left knee, specific as it could be, left knee. And at first, nobody responded. And suddenly his hand went up like a submarine periscope, real slowly. And then he comes on I bring him on the stage. Here he's hiding from a gang. And now I put him up in front of 1,500 people. And I point at him, and I would that you and everyone watching right now could have seen the look on that young man's face when a torn ACL, the pain left instantaneously in front of everybody. And now he's radically saved. That's what's already going on in Colorado Springs. I mean, from the 16th of July to the 19th, those 3 days, I'm telling you, it's going to shift culture. It's going to have a permanent result. I already saw it on the 16th of April. it was a case of the word that applied, the only one that does, is unstoppable. And what we saw there is unstoppable. And there's so many levels. You can come as a volunteer. You can come and register for the brunch on the 20th of May. You can be registered for the Fire and Glory tour, those amazing epic sessions that are going to occur under the tent. And you can come for the nights where Living Proof is going to saturate that tent.
I love it, man. And we're going to have, once again, we're going to have what is now best-selling author Floyd Brown with Western Journal. I think Western Journal is going to be advertising these meetings. They got like 2 million a digital subscription list. Bill Federer, who has labored in Colorado with Andrew Womack and with Truth and Liberty. There's been people that have been praying and working in Colorado. Colorado used to be a red state. It was chosen by the Democrat strategists to flip it to show that if they brought in millionaire and billionaire big buck donors, if they brought in lawyers that could embarrass candidates with litigation, if they created fake news teams that could suddenly swamp the internet with articles accusing these politicians of things they know not of while lawsuits are coming at them, they so overwhelmed and bamboozled the system, mobilizing environmental activists and gay activists to hit targeted, attacks, that they flipped the state from being the state that was focused on the family and World Prayer House and all that stuff. They flipped it right over into a blue state, and now it's kind of in a purple war zone. But I believe going there this time is going to push the issue in a new direction. It's all part of a spiritual battle. By the way, when they flipped Colorado, there's a book that was given to me called The Colorado Blueprint. They took it to the DNC, and I think they had their great convention in Denver that year with Obama doing his speech, and they all agreed that Obama, Soros, and the machine was going to take over America in every state using a similar strategy. And this is the reason why we've been on the ropes. We have been playing catch up with this strategy for the last 10 years. Trump was an interruption of it. Trump was an infuriating outsider that came in and screwed up their game. But that game is in full gear right now. And God's now showed us he's got his own blueprint. And the blueprint is educate my people, mobilize my people, deploy my people, occupy till I come, take my anointing into the sphere that I've assigned you with, and bind the devil at the gates of the city. And watch how God starts to flip America back one county at a time, one state at a time, until America is recovered. This is part of the strategy. It's fire and it's glory, and it's a tour going to Colorado Springs next. You got to join us there, July 16th through 19th. It's going to be a phenomenal, I just think it's revival and reformation where the two kiss each other and meet. Mario, final thoughts before we go off the air?
I just think it's important for you to understand that we've prayed, we've believed, we've all wanted, we've all yearned for, when are we going to see something that will actually carry the potential to change the situation? This is it. No longer words, folks. Fire and Glory Tour is the answer to millions of Americans who have prayed for God to do something effective against evil. And you need to be a part of it. You need to go to Fire and Glory Tour and register for this great event.
Thank you, Mario Murillo. I'm glad to see you're back in your studio, and I look forward to every week we should be doing an update like this that people need to hear. By the way, how can they get your blog? Your blog is a prophetic trumpet blast in itself. What was your last blog about, by the way?
Oh, the last blog was about the unstoppable miracle that God did in Colorado Springs. I gave you a little foretaste of it, and it was amazing. It was an amazing night. I'll never forget it. It gave me a foretaste of what we're going to see in the tent. The best way to get to us is mariomurillo.org. Everything we're doing is right there.
All right, mariomurillo.org. I'm honored to be a joint laborer with you in the harvest. I just love the fact that God is teaming people up to do great works. And I want to thank all of you that are watching and praying. You make a difference in your watching and your praying. And by the way, you never hear me asking, I hardly ever talk about giving and asking for funds. I'm unashamed in taking up the offering for this one, because this is one where we're full tilt out of our own. Every resource we've got is going to saving America, because this is the battle of the bulge for America right now. We're like we're like Easy Company. We're landing in this place, going to work, but we need your prayers and we need your support. And I believe they can go to Fire and Glory. Can they donate there? Did we set it up for that?
Yes,
right.
We did.
All right, well, let's go there, folks, and support this noble effort. And Mario, we're going to have you back again on a frequent basis. So thank you once again. God bless you all. We'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.
We have seen miracles. We've seen people filled with the Spirit. We've seen thousands of people get touched and saved.
Fire and Glory Tour will also always be about signs, wonders, and miracles. Fire and Glory Tour will always be about winning the lost to Christ. And we're going to do it wherever we go. Fire and Glory Tour will always be about taking America back.
America, we've been praying for a great awakening. Look around you. The awakening is in the midst of you. You are the awakening.